So good morning students. In the previous video I had dealt with malabsorption syndrome, like we'll see what are the malabsorption syndrome, how it is caused, what are the symptoms that is we have seen, and how it can be diagnosed, and what are the management, like how it can be prevented. So all this thing we had seen in the malabsorption syndrome. So now we'll continue with the class. So in this video I'll be dealing with intestinal obstruction. Okay, I'll be dealing with intestinal obstruction. So in this class, in this video we'll be seeing what is intestinal obstruction, how it is caused, like what are the symptoms that we can develop when the intestine is obstructed, and how this obstruction can be managed. So all this thing we'll be studying in this video today. So we'll start. So it is usually, what is this intestinal obstruction now? So intestinal obstruction is nothing but interruption in the normal flow of contents through intestine. Okay, it is the interruption in the normal flow of the contents through intestine. So this can occur anywhere it can occur in any place. Okay, this can occur in any place, either in the small intestine or large intestine. So what is that? Intestinal obstruction, it is nothing but interruption in the normal flow of, okay, it is nothing but interruption in the normal flow of the normal flow of the contents into the intestine, and this can the obstruction may occur in any place, either in the small intestine or large intestine, and this can be complete or incomplete obstruction. Okay, it can be complete or incomplete obstruction. Okay, it can be complete or incomplete obstruction. So what is that? Intestinal obstruction, it is nothing but interruption in the normal flow of contents through the intestine. So this can be, or the obstruction may occur in any place. Okay, the obstruction can occur in any place, that is in small intestine or large intestine, and this can be complete or incomplete obstruction. Okay, the complete or incomplete obstruction. So this intestinal obstruction may occur due to mechanical cause or paralytic cause. Okay, so this obstruction can occur due to mechanical cause or paralytic cause. Okay, this obstruction can occur due to mechanical cause or paralytic cause, and this is usually found at the birth. Okay, it can be found at the birth in the form of congenital malformation, or it can be acquired after birth. Okay, or it can acquire after birth. So this can occur due to mechanical cause or paralytic cause. So this can be present at the birth and can occur as a congenital anomalies, or it can be acquired after birth. Okay, or it can acquire after birth. So that is usually says. So what is intestinal obstruction? Intestinal obstruction is nothing but interruption in the normal flow of content in the intestine. So this can occur in any place, either in small intestine or large intestine. So this can be complete or incomplete. Okay, this can be complete or incomplete obstruction, and this can occur due to any cause such as mechanical cause or paralytic cause. So this can be present at the birth, or it can be acquired after birth. So that is usually there. So next we will see what are the causes of this intestinal obstruction. So the causes, it can be due to many causes, such as first is congenital intestinal obstruction. Okay, congenital, in case of congenital intestinal obstruction, the causes, it includes mainly like due to intestinal atresia. Okay, it might be due to intestinal atresia. So this is commonly found in duodenum. Okay, it is commonly found in duodenum. Okay, the common causes like for this intestinal obstruction, it can be like in case of congenital intestinal obstruction. Okay, in case of congenital intestinal obstruction, so the causes can be like in case of intestinal atresia. Okay, in case of can be due to intestinal atresia, and this is commonly found in duodenum. Okay, it is commonly found in duodenum. So that is usually there, and this can be present like more than one place at a time. Okay, it can be present more than one place at a time, like it can be present in duodenum, or it can be present at the ileum, jejunum and colon. So that is, it can be present in more than one place at a time. Okay, it can be present more than one place at a time. So that is the causes for this congenital intestinal obstruction. It is first is intestinal atresia. So this is usually commonly present in duodenum, but it can be present at one place, more than one place at a time. Like it can be present in ileum, jejunum and colon. So next cause, it is malrotation of gut. Okay, the next cause for this congenital intestinal obstruction is malrotation of gut. Okay, the malrotation of gut. So what is this malrotation of gut? So this is usually seen that it is the incomplete rotation of the gut. Okay, it is incomplete rotation of the gut during intrauterine life, approximately 12 weeks of gestation. So this malrotation of gut, it is the incomplete rotation of the gut which occurs in the intrauterine life, especially at the 12th week of gestation, okay, especially at the 12th week of gestation. So in this, what is happening? The cecum comes below the pylorus, okay, the cecum comes to lie below the pylorus, and then transverse colon and ascending colon becomes mobile and vulnerable to twist, okay, transverse colon and ascending colon become mobile and unable to twist, okay, and unable to twist. So when it is not twisted, it is usually called as malrotation of gut, okay, when it is not rotated, it is usually called as malrotation of gut. So that is usually there. So normally the causes, it is having many causes. So the first is congenital intestinal obstruction. So the following conditions are the causes for this intestinal obstruction. That is congenital intestinal obstruction. That is first intestinal atresia. This is usually seen in the duodenum. It can occur in more than one place at a time. That is, it can seen in the ileum, jejunum as well as colon. So next is malrotation of gut, that is incomplete rotation of the gut, that is usually during intrauterine life and mainly occurs during 12th week of gestation. So what is happening here? The transverse colon and the ascending colon will not twist properly and therefore they become vulnerable to twist as well as they become mobile. So due to this, it is usually called as malrotation of gut. So next is meconium plague. Okay, the next cause, it is meconium plague. Thick plague of meconium in the neonates, okay, when there is thick plug of meconium in the neonates, okay, so meconium plug when there is thick plug of meconium in the neonates. So next is meconium ileus, okay, the next is meconium ileus. So what is this meconium ileus? So meconium ileus, when the terminal ileum lumen, okay, when the terminal ileum lumen is plagued with meconium, okay, the terminal ileum lumen, when the terminal ileum lumen is plagued at the end of plagued with meconium. So this occurs due to lack of pancreatic enzyme. Okay, this occurs due to lack of pancreatic enzyme. So that is usually about this thing. So that is mainly meconium ileus. So this occurs when terminal ileum lumen plugs in with meconium. This occurs when there is insufficient pancreatic enzyme. When there is when there is lack of pancreatic enzyme. So this is the main causes, that is mainly due to congenital intestinal. This causes, it is mainly divided into, one is congenital intestinal obstruction, the other is acquired intestinal obstruction. And so we'll see what are the causes of this congenital intestinal obstruction. So it may be due to intestinal atresia, it can be due to meconium plague, or it can be due to meconium ileus, or it can be due to malrotation of gut. So meconium intestinal atresia, it occurs in the duodenum. It can occur in more than one place at a time, like ileum, colon, that is usually occur. Next is malrotation of the gut, when the transverse colon and the ascending colon does not twist, or when they are mobile and they are vulnerable to twist, then we call it as malrotation of the gut. So next is meconium plug. Next is meconium ileus, where the terminal ileum lumen, where the terminal ileum lumen plugs with the gets plugged with the meconium, and this usually occurs due to lack of pancreatic enzyme. So next cause is acquired intestinal obstruction. The next cause is acquired intestinal obstruction. So in case of this acquired intestinal obstruction, this occurs due to many other conditions. Okay, this also occurs due to other conditions, like in case of tumor or polyp, in case of hernia, in case of foreign body, in case of worm infestations, or in case of inflammatory diseases like Crohn's disease, appendicitis and ulcerative colitis. So these are usually the causes of this acquired intestinal obstruction. So mainly it includes due to tumor or polyp, worm infestation due to inflammatory diseases such as appendicitis, Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis, and next in case of foreign body or in case of hernia. So these are usually the causes of intestinal obstruction, that is mainly divided into congenital intestinal obstruction and acquired intestinal obstruction. Okay, congenital intestinal obstruction and acquired intestinal obstruction. So this is about this causes of intestinal obstruction. So next is pathophysiology. So we'll see what is the pathophysiology of this intestinal obstruction. So this usually occurs due to any cause. Okay, it usually occurs due to any cause. Obstruction will be there. So the obstruction will be due to any cause. So that due to this, what happened? There is accumulation of gases and secretions. So due to this obstruction, there is accumulation of gases and secretions. And due to this accumulation of gases and secretions, blockage, they will usually block. Okay, they usually block. So that usually increases, when there is block, that usually increases venous pressure. Okay, that usually increases venous pressure in the blocked area. That usually increases venous pressure in the blocked area. So that is usually there. And next is usually what happened due to this circulatory stasis and edema will be there. Okay, due to this usually there will be circulatory stasis and edema. Okay, there will be circulatory stasis and edema that usually leads to anorexia. Okay, that usually leads to anorexia, and that later on it leads to bowel necrosis. Okay, later on it leads to bowel necrosis, and later on it leads to bowel gangrene. Okay, later on it leads to bowel gangrene. So this is usually the pathophysiology of intestinal obstruction. So that is mainly it includes obstruction due to any cause. Okay, obstruction due to any cause that usually leads to accumulation of gases and secretions that usually blocks, and due to this blockage the venous pressure will be increased, and when there is increased venous pressure circulatory stasis and edema develops, and when there is circulatory stasis and edema that usually leads to anorexia, and when there is anorexia it leads to bowel necrosis, and due to this bowel necrosis there is bowel syndrome. So understood. So what is the pathophysiology? It can be due to any obstruction, and it can be due to any cause. Obstruction can be due to any cause that usually leads to accumulation of gases and secretion that usually increases venous pressure in the blocked area, that in turn leads to circulatory stasis and edema, that in turn leads to anorexia, bowel necrosis and bowel gangrene. So this is usually about this pathophysiology of intestinal obstruction. So next is symptoms. So we'll see what are the symptoms of this intestinal obstruction. It mainly includes, like they'll be having abdominal cramp. Okay, they'll be having severe abdominal cramp, abdominal distension will be there, vomiting will be there, flatus will be absent, and there will be no passage of stool. There will be no passage of stool. Fever will be there, drowsiness, disoriented, dehydration. Next there will be toxicity and shock. Okay, there will be toxicity and shock. Bowel sound gradually decreases. Okay, the bowel sound gradually decreases. So these are usually the symptoms of intestinal obstruction. So what are the symptoms of intestinal obstruction? It mainly includes abdominal cramp, abdominal distension, vomiting, fever, no passage of stools, dehydration, drowsiness, toxicity and shock, then increased bowel sound. Okay, increased bowel sound. So these are usually the symptoms of this intestinal obstruction. So what are the symptoms? Abdominal cramp, abdominal distension, fever, no passage of stools, drowsiness, dehydration, toxicity and shock, increased bowel sound. Okay, increased bowel sound which may reduce gradually. Okay, there will be increased bowel sound which may reduce gradually. So these are usually the symptoms of this intestinal obstruction. So next is diagnosis. So what are the diagnosis? So diagnosis, main thing, history collection and physical examination. Next we have to go with X-ray of the abdomen. Okay, we have to go with X-ray of the abdomen. Then barium enema should be then. So this usually shows the site of blockage. Okay, this usually shows the site of blockage. Next we have to go with sigmoidoscopy. Next is blood examination to determine sodium and potassium level. Okay, determine sodium and potassium level. So this will be decreased. So it is mainly to determine sodium and potassium level. Okay, this is mainly to determine sodium and potassium level which will be decreased. So that is usually about these things, and also WBC should be checked. Serum amylase should be checked. This is mainly checked to know about the necrosis. Okay, WBC and serum amylase should be done. This is mainly done to know the what is the necrosis. So this is about this diagnostic evaluation that we do. So what are the diagnostic evaluation that we do? Complete history, physical examination, blood examination to determine sodium and potassium level, and this will be decreased. WBC and serum amylase should be done, which is mainly to detect necrosis. Then we have to go with X-ray abdomen, and then we have to go with barium enema to show the blockage, then sigmoidoscopy. Okay, this is usually the diagnosis. What are the diagnosis? History collection, physical examination, then sigmoidoscopy, X-ray abdomen, barium enema. Then we have to go with blood test, that is usually seen, it is mainly to check sodium and potassium level which will be increased. Then we should have to check with the WBC count, serum amylase to check the presence of necrosis. So this is usually about this diagnostic evaluation of intestinal obstruction. And what is management? So management, it is done mainly where first we have to correct the dehydration, where we start with IV fluid therapy. Okay, we start with IV fluid therapy. Then we have to go with, if they are not able to eat food through mouth. Okay, if they are not able to eat food through mouth, then nasogastric tubing should be fixed. Then we have to give through this nasogastric tube. Then analgesic can be given to reduce pain. Antispasmodic drugs can be given to reduce cramp as well as this cramp. So that is usually about this medical management that we have to go. So medical management, first thing is that we have to start with IV fluids to correct fluid and electrolyte balance. Okay, we have to start with IV fluids to correct fluid and electrolyte balance. Then if the baby is not able to drink through, eat through orally, then we have to start with nasogastric suctioning. Okay, then we have to start with nasogastric suctioning has to be done. Next, analgesics can be given to reduce pain. Antispasmodics, it is also given to reduce pain. Then antibiotics should be given to reduce infection. Okay, antibiotics should be given to reduce infections. That is usually there. So surgical management is mainly done to relieve obstruction. Okay, surgical management is mainly done to relieve obstruction. So in this mainly laparotomy is done. Okay, this mainly we go with laparotomy. Okay, this is the management of intestinal obstruction. So what is the management? Mainly we go with therapeutic management, where we usually fluid therapy will be started. Then we have to give it antibiotics will be given, analgesics will be given. And surgical management mainly we go with laparotomy. Okay, surgical management mainly we go with laparotomy. So this is usually about this management of intestinal obstruction. So in this class, in this video we have studied about intestinal obstruction. So what is intestinal obstruction? So intestinal obstruction, it is nothing but like it is interruption of the normal flow of contents through the intestine. This can occur any place, either in the small intestine and large intestine. So that is usually can be complete or incomplete. So this usually occurs, can be caused due to any, it can be present through birth or it can be acquired. So causes, it is mainly divided into acquired and congenital. Congenital causes, I have told you that intestinal atresia, then malrotation of gut, meconium plug, meconium ileus, and then obstruction due to acquired, it can be due to any tumor, hernia, foreign body, worm infestation, or in case of infective disease, inflammatory disease such as appendicitis, Crohn's disease, and ulcerative colitis. So symptoms we have seen: diarrhea, abdominal pain, cramp, and then they will be having vomiting, flatulence, absence of flatus, no passage of stool, diarrhea will not be there, so no passage of stools, so they will not be having any passage of stools, mucus or this one, fever, drowsiness, dehydration, toxicity, shock, as well as increased bowel sound will be decreasing gradually. So diagnosis, history collection, physical examination, x-ray, barium enema will be done. Management I have already told you. Surgical management we go with laparotomy. Medical management we go with correcting the symptoms. So we go with correcting the symptoms. So this is about this intestinal obstruction.